Ever get stuck in those conversations where, like, everyone's trying to sound so deep and profound, but you're sitting there and it's like you can see right through them, you know?
Oh, I know exactly what you mean.
Like someone's going on and on about, oh, materialism is so shallow, but they've got this giant flashy watch on their wrist.
Right. It's like, come on, man.
Exactly. It's those kind of everyday contradictions that make you wonder, like, why are people so complicated?
You hit the nail on the head with that one. It's those moments when someone's actions don't quite line up with their words that can be seriously revealing. And what's wild is it's not just about being a hypocrite. It's about this whole tangled web of human nature we're all part of. And this text we're diving into today, it really goes deep on this stuff.
Oh, okay. So what's the title?
It's called Wo-Wit-O.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
I need a translation on that one.
Yeah, it means the complexity of human nature, the essence of relationships. And it gets into those contradictions, you know, how we can say one thing but feel something totally different underneath.
So it's not just us calling people out for being fake.
No, not at all. It's about going beyond those kind of surface judgments and trying to understand the deeper stuff going on, the psychology of it all, you know. And the really cool part is, even though some of what the text says might seem a little cynical at first, it can actually be really useful for navigating, like, your own relationships and stuff.
Okay, now you've got me interested. Let's get into it.
Yeah.
One thing that really stood out to me from the text was this idea that we often crave things we claim to dislike. Like, you hear people say, money isn't everything, but then they're working crazy hours to get a raise, or you catch them checking out someone's fancy car with a little envy in their eyes.
Yeah, totally. That's exactly what the text digs into, this constant tug of war between what we say we believe and what we actually desire, you know?
Right, like our subconscious is working overtime.
Exactly. And it's not just about money or material stuff either. It's like you find yourself genuinely congratulating someone on their success, but deep down there's this little voice in your head that's like, wait, why not me?
Ugh, it's like that little pang of envy you just can't shake, even when you want to be happy for the other person.
Precisely. And according to this text, those conflicting feelings, they're more common than we think. It's that inner battle between what we think we should want and what we actually crave.
So it's not just me being, like, secretly competitive. It's actually a normal human thing.
Totally normal. And the text actually takes it a step further. It suggests that those seemingly contradictory feelings, they can be pretty powerful.
Oh, how so?
Well, it gets into this idea of schadenfreude, you know, that secret little thrill we might feel when someone who seems to have it all, especially if we see them as a rival or something, experiences a setback.
Okay, that does sound kind of harsh when you say it out loud. Are we really wired to enjoy other people's misfortune?
Well, it's not always that black and white. Remember, this text is all about looking deeper. It suggests that schadenfreude, well, it might actually be a natural, even if it's unconscious, way of dealing with our own insecurities. Like when we see someone who seems to have it all stumble, it can kind of temporarily make us feel better about our own struggles, you know?
Okay, so it's not necessarily that we want to see others fail, but more like their misfortune gives us this weird sense of relief.
Exactly. And that's a really important point here. Understanding these, let's call them shadowy emotions like envy or schadenfreude, it doesn't mean we're condoning them. It's more about recognizing that they usually come from our own insecurities and anxieties.
And if we can tap into where those feelings are coming from, maybe we can start to deal with them in a healthier way, right?
Exactly. And this is especially important when it comes to our relationships, because as we're going to get into, even our closest bonds aren't immune to this stuff.
Okay, so let's talk about relationships then. I mean, this text does not sugarcoat how messy and complicated they can be.
Not even a little bit. It really emphasizes how genuine connection requires vulnerability and how a lot of people straight up avoid that, you know, because they're terrified of getting hurt.
Well, yeah, I mean, putting yourself out there is scary. But then again, if you're always holding back, can you really connect with someone on a deeper level?
It's a tough one, for sure. And this text gets that. It also points out that even when we do let our guard down, stuff like envy and competition can sneak in and mess things up, even in our closest relationships.
So that envy thing pops up again, huh? It really is the party pooper of emotions. But how does it actually show up in our relationships?
Well, the text talks about how even our friends and family, as much as they love us, they might only want the best for us up to a point, you know?
Yeah.
Like, they'll support our goals and dreams, but only as long as we're not, like, outshining them.
Ouch.
Yeah, and the thing is, this isn't always intentional. It's often subconscious. It's not that they're trying to sabotage us, but those feelings of envy, they can unconsciously affect how they treat us.
Man, that friends only wanting the best for you up to a point thing that's a little too close to home makes you wonder if anyone's really rooting for you to, like, totally crush it.
Right. It really makes you think about the nature of support, doesn't it? And yeah, like we've been saying, this text doesn't shy away from the hard truths, but it doesn't want us to get all cynical and jaded either.
So what's the takeaway then? How do we deal with this stuff?
Well, the text suggests that understanding these things, so that everyone's got some self-interest, that envy can pop up, it can actually help us have more realistic expectations.
So not expecting everyone to be perfect,
Yeah.
but more like accepting that we're all kind of messy.
Exactly. And that includes ourselves, it's that whole hurt people thing.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
We've all got our baggage, our insecurities, and sometimes they come out sideways.
That actually makes me feel a little better about things. Not that it's okay to be a jerk to people, but like, at least it makes sense.
For sure. And this text is big on reminding us. Understanding doesn't mean we condone bad behavior. It's just about seeing the bigger picture, Understanding that even the people closest to us, they're coming from their own place, their own experiences.
Okay, I'm with you. So how do we use all this to build better relationships then? If we know envy and all that's lurking in the background, how do we deal?
$1,000,000 question, right. And this text, it doesn't exactly come with a relationship instruction manual,
Too bad.
but it does give us some good clues. One big one is setting boundaries.
Boundaries, okay.
Like when we set clear limits, when we're upfront about expectations, it creates this space where everyone can, be themselves, be genuine without fear of stepping on toes.
So it's about recognizing that we deserve love and connection without having to constantly please others or sacrifice what we need.
You got it. It's about understanding that our needs are just as important as anyone else's. It's not selfish to take care of ourselves. In fact, it's essential for a healthy relationship.
That's actually like a huge weight off my shoulders to hear that. Because you're right, it's not about becoming cold or anything, but realizing you got to take care of yourself first.
Totally. It's like that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. Fill your own cup first, Through self-care, self-love, boundaries, then you've got something to give.
That's a good one. I'm going to remember that.
Yeah.
It makes me think about how often we're way too hard on ourselves in relationships. Like we set these crazy high expectations and then beat ourselves up when we don't meet them.
Oh, 100%. That inner critic can be brutal, especially when it comes to love and all that.
It's like, why are we always comparing ourselves, magnifying our flaws? It's exhausting.
Tell me about it. But this text seems to suggest a starting point is to remember everyone's a work in progress. No one's perfect. Expecting perfection from anyone, especially ourselves, it just sets us up for failure.
So it's about being a little kinder, a little more curious, both with ourselves and the people we care about.
Exactly. Offering that same grace we give others so easily, but directing it inward, We all mess up. We all have flaws, but that doesn't make us any less worthy of love.
Listening to you, it makes me think about all the times I've held myself back from doing things I really want to do just because I'm scared of what others might think. It's like, I'd rather fit in than stand out.
And what this text seems to be saying is that it's when we do stand out, when we embrace what makes us unique, that's when we really come alive. Our differences aren't something to be ashamed of, they're something to celebrate.
I know that intellectually, but actually living it, that's the tough part.
Telling me it takes guts to be yourself, especially when it goes against the grain. But this text, it's like this little reminder that true freedom, true happiness, it comes from living your truth, messes and all.
You know what else this makes me think about? All those little compromises we make in relationships, the stuff we overlook, the red flags we ignore, all in the name of love or connection, I guess.
Yeah. It's so easy to get caught up in wanting things to work out, even when the warning signs are right there, flashing.
Right. So how do we balance that desire for connection with, actually protecting ourselves from getting hurt?
It's a balancing act, for sure. And this text doesn't pretend it's easy. One thing it emphasizes, and this connects back to the boundaries thing, is self-awareness.
Okay, so being really honest with ourselves about what's really going on.
Yeah. Being able to tell the difference between real love and compatibility versus just clinging to something out of fear or insecurity or this need to fix someone.
So being honest with ourselves about what we are and aren't getting out of the relationship, and then being brave enough to act on that.
Exactly. Sometimes choosing yourself, that takes the most courage. It's not selfish, it's self-preservation. And sometimes when we do that, it opens the door for something even better to come along.
Okay, I like that. So we've got boundaries, we've got self-compassion, we've got the courage to choose ourselves. Anything else this magical text has to offer for navigating these relationship minefields?
Oh, there's more. One really interesting point it makes is that sometimes the people who seem the strongest, the ones who are putting on the bravest face, they might actually be the most insecure underneath it all.
It's like that saying, the loudest one in the room is usually the most insecure.
Nailed it. And the point isn't to judge them for it, but to understand that it's often coming from a place of vulnerability. When we get that, it's easier to have compassion, you know?
Compassion over judgment. I like it. So, knowing all this, how do we bring more authenticity into our interactions, especially in a world that often feels so fake and surface level?
The age-old question. This text seems to suggest that authenticity requires, well, first of all, knowing yourself and being willing to really challenge your own assumptions.
Okay, so what does that even look like?
It means asking yourself the hard questions like, why am I acting this way? What am I hoping to get out of this? And really importantly, am I being my true self here, or am I just playing a role?
Man, those are some tough questions.
No doubt. But if we want to grow, if we want to evolve, they're unavoidable. Real self-awareness means being honest and vulnerable, and that can be super uncomfortable sometimes.
But ultimately, that discomfort can lead to some pretty incredible breakthroughs, right?
Exactly. It's about accepting that we're all works in progress.
Learning as we go.
Exactly. And that's more than okay.
It's about embracing the journey, right? Even the messy parts.
Yes, because it's often in those messy, imperfect moments that we grow the most and connect with others in the most meaningful ways.
It's all starting to click now. This text has really challenged some of my assumptions about people, about relationships. It's a lot to digest, but in a good way.
That's what's so great about these kinds of conversations. They push us to think differently.
To learn and grow.
Exactly. And hopefully to approach everything with a little more understanding, a little more kindness.
And maybe a little more humor, too, while we're at it.
Always. Because honestly, we got to be able to laugh at this whole being human thing, right?
Right. Okay, so speaking of approaching things with a little more grace and understanding, this next part of the text really got me thinking. It talks about how we often mistake kindness for weakness, especially in a world that seems to reward, like, being assertive, even aggressive, over compassion. Have you ever noticed that?
All the time. It's like we're conditioned to think that being nice means being a pushover, that setting boundaries or speaking your mind is somehow mean. But this text flips that on its head. It argues that true strength comes from empathy and understanding, from being able to stand up for yourself and be considerate of others.
So it's about finding that balance between being assertive when you need to be, but not losing your compassion along the way.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that those qualities aren't mutually exclusive. We can be strong and kind, assertive and compassionate. True strength often lies in vulnerability, in being able to be yourself without needing to control or dominate others.
That's a powerful message, especially in a world that often feels so divided. It's like we're constantly being told it's us versus them, but this text suggests there might be another way.
It does. It suggests that we can lead with empathy and understanding, even when it's hard, even when it feels counterintuitive.
It's about remembering our shared humanity, right?
Exactly.
It's true. That whole know yourself thing, it really changes how you approach, like, everything. Once you kind of get a handle on your own stuff, it's like you can actually make conscious choices instead of just reacting.
Totally. It's empowering, right? It's like instead of feeling like you're at the mercy of your emotions and your past, you realize you have a say in how you show up.
You know, this whole conversation's got me thinking about this one part of the text. It talks about how true happiness, like deep down contentment, it doesn't come from external stuff like achievements or possessions. It comes from self-acceptance.
That's a big one, isn't it?
It is, because we live in a world that's all about do more, be more, achieve more. But maybe, just maybe, it's way simpler than that.
It's a powerful message, and I think it's easy to lose sight of that. You know, we get so caught up in the hustle and chasing the next goal that we forget to just be present with what is.
Right. It's like always looking at what we don't have instead of appreciating what's right in front of us.
Exactly. It's about cultivating gratitude, finding joy in the simple things, even when things are tough.
You know, it's funny. As we've been talking about all this, I keep coming back to this one thought. What if we all just cut ourselves a little slack?
Ooh. I like where you're going with this.
What if, instead of focusing on all the ways we fall short, we actually celebrated our wins, big and small? What if we just acknowledge that, hey, we're all out here doing the best we can?
I love that. It's about embracing our imperfections, celebrating our resilience, and approaching everything ourselves, each other, the whole shebang, with a little more grace and understanding, and maybe a little humor thrown in there too.
Right. Because, let's face it, life is messy. Might as well laugh along the way. Well, that about wraps it up for this deep dive into the complexities of human nature and relationships. We hope this conversation has given you some new insights, some food for thought, and maybe even inspired you to be a little kinder to yourself and to those around you.
It's been a pleasure diving into all of this with you.